Little girl helps businessman fix his car. The merciless late afternoon sun made the asphalt of the rural road steam as Zoe Williams walked home from school. The 10-year-old girl slowed her pace when she saw the shiny blue Chevrolet Corvette parked on the shoulder, its hood up like a wide open mouth. A man in an expensive suit that surely cost more than all the furniture in her house paced circles beside the car, yelling into his phone. "I don't care how much you charge for the tow. I've been stuck on this deserted road for 2 hours. I have a meeting with the senator in." The man checked his platinum watch. Less than 3 hours, for God's sake. Zoe considered for a moment whether she should go on her way. Her Aunt Patricia always told her not to talk to strangers, especially those who seemed so obviously out of place in the humble rural area where they lived, a predominantly African-American community 2 hours from Chicago. But something about the man's desperate frustration made her stop. Zoe adjusted the weight of the worn backpack where she carried her books, and more importantly, the small toolkit her Uncle Marcus had given her, a mechanic who insisted that everyone should know at least the basics about engines. "Excuse me, sir," Zoe called, approaching cautiously. "Need some help with your car?" Thomas Richardson, CEO of Richardson Enterprises and owner of half of Chicago's commercial real estate, turned in surprise. The irritation on his face quickly turned to condescension when he saw the small figure with colorful braids, faded shorts, and a Stanford t-shirt that was clearly too big for her. "That's very kind of you, sweetheart. But this is a high-performance vehicle. I need a real mechanic." Zoe shrugged, stepping closer to peer under the hood. "My uncle has a garage and has been teaching me about cars since I learned to walk. I can at least take a look." Before Thomas could protest, she had already dropped her backpack on the ground and was leaning over the engine with surprising confidence. "When did the problem start?" she asked, all professional. Thomas sighed, realizing he didn't have much to lose. "The engine started overheating about 40 minutes ago, and then it just died." "Did you smell anything sweet, like syrup?" Thomas blinked, surprised. "Yes, now that you mention it." "How did you know?" "Cooling system." Zoe pointed to a small puddle under the car that Thomas hadn't even noticed. "It's leaking coolant. That's why it overheated." As she spoke, Thomas watched the girl with growing curiosity. There was something strangely familiar about her, the way she furrowed her brow slightly in concentration, how her intelligent eyes scanned the engine methodically. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. "Zoe. Zoe Williams." She held out her hand, stained with grease from the inspection. He shook it hesitantly. "Thomas Richardson." "Nice to meet you, Mr. Richardson. I think I can fix this temporarily." Zoe opened her backpack and took out a small metal case. "Uncle Marcus makes me carry an emergency kit. You never know when someone might need help on the road." Thomas watched, fascinated as the girl worked with impressive efficiency, locating the leak in the radiator hose and applying a special tape. "That should hold until you get to town," she explained. "But you'll need to add water to replace the lost coolant." It was when Zoe raised her hand to brush her hair away from her face that Thomas saw it. A ring with a sapphire blue stone set in antique silver, held on her finger with thread wrapped around the base to keep it from slipping off her small finger. Thomas's world seemed to stop. The sun glinted off the stone, reflecting an internal pattern he would recognize anywhere, a small star-shaped imperfection. A ring he had given 12 years ago to a little girl named Zoe at an orphanage called Bright Futures, days before it was mysteriously closed. "That ring," Thomas began, his voice suddenly trembling. "It's very unusual." Zoe looked down at her hand. "It was my mother's. My adoptive mother, Elise. She died last year." A shadow of sadness crossed her face. She said it was a symbol of an important promise. "May I ask where Elise got this ring?" Zoe shrugged. "She never told me exactly. She just said it belonged to someone special and that one day I would understand its meaning." Thomas tried to pull himself together, offering to drive Zoe home as a thank you. She hesitated only briefly before accepting. During the 15-minute drive, Thomas asked seemingly casual questions about her life, where she went to school, how long she had lived there, who she had lived with since her adoptive mother had died. "I live with my Aunt Patricia and Uncle Marcus," Zoe explained. "They took me in when Elise died." "Have you always lived here?" Thomas asked, trying to keep his voice casual as he gripped the steering wheel tightly. Since I was 3. Before that. Zoe hesitated. Elise didn't talk about it much. I know, I was adopted from an orphanage called Bright Futures. It closed soon after. Thomas almost lost control of the car. Bright Futures? Are you sure? Yes. Why? Do you know it? Thomas took a deep breath. I did. A long time ago. As they approached a modest but well-kept house, Thomas stopped the car. Zoe thanked him and said goodbye. But before she could get out, he handed her a card. Zoe, if you ever need anything at all, please call me. The girl accepted the car with a curious look and got out of the car. Thomas watched as she ran toward the house, the rings sparkling in the sun. His hands trembled as he picked up the phone to call his private investigator. What Zoe couldn't know as she waved one last time to the stranger in his expensive car was that this chance encounter had just set in motion events that would reveal secrets kept for more than a decade. Secrets that connected a billion-dollar empire, a mysteriously closed orphanage, and a young girl with an extraordinary ability to fix broken things. Thomas spent 3 sleepless nights staring at enlarged photos of the sapphire ring his investigator had captured. The jewel he had given little Zoe at the Bright Futures orphanage as a promise that he would come back for her, a promise he never kept. In his office at Richardson Enterprises, he examined documents scattered across his desk. 12 years ago, his father, Victor Richardson, had bought the Bright Futures property for a fraction of its value, citing financial irregularities. Coincidentally, Thomas was named CEO shortly thereafter. Mr. Richardson, Ms. Carter from Legal is here with the Skyline Project documents, his assistant announced. The Skyline Project, a luxury complex under construction on the very site where the orphanage had once stood. Thomas quickly tucked the reports away before Carter entered. The Bright Futures acquisition documents are here, Carter said. Although, I don't understand why we're revisiting old business. Your father was quite specific about keeping these documents on file. My father is retired in Arizona, Thomas replied dryly, and I run the company now. As he examined the documents, Thomas discovered suspicious bank transfers and, more disturbingly, a list of children who had been reallocated when the orphanage closed. Zoe Williams' name was circled in red with a note, special case. Contact VR. His investigator Donovan called with news. I found Elise Williams. Car accident last year. Brakes failed. Suspicious circumstances. What about the adoption records? Missing officially. Zoe Williams never existed at Bright Futures. Find out everything you can about her current family, Thomas ordered. Meanwhile, Zoe was working in the small workshop behind her aunt and uncle's house. The place was a refuge. Tools organized on the walls. The comforting smell of oil and grease. Did you manage to fix the old radio? Marcus asked, entering the workshop. Zoe smiled, lifting the 1950s radio. I did it. Just had to reconnect a few wires. Marcus affectionately ruffled his niece's braids. You have a gift, girl. I've never seen anyone understand machines like you. Uncle, do you think my mom will be proud? Elise was so proud of you. She could have burst. Zoe twirled the ring on her finger. I met a rich man the other day. His car broke down, and I fixed it. He recognized my ring. Marcus froze. What man? Thomas Richardson. He gave me his card. Zoe showed them the card. He seemed strange when he saw my ring. Marcus's face paled. He exchanged glances with Patricia, who appeared at the door. Zoe, dear, Patricia said tensely. Remember when we promised to tell you the truth about Elise when you were older? I think that time has come. That night, Zoe heard the hidden story. How Elise, a nurse at the orphanage, had run away with her when the orphanage suddenly closed. How they had changed their names and gone into hiding for years, always looking over their shoulders. Your mother left this for you, Patricia said, handing her a yellowed envelope. She made us promise to give it to you only if someone from the Richardson family showed up. With trembling hands, Zoe began to read. My dear Zoe, if you are reading this, someone has found you. There are things you need to know. At Thomas's apartment, Donovan called again. Sir, someone else is investigating Bright Futures. A reporter named Jasmine Cooper. What does she know? Quite a lot. and she has a theory about why your father was interested in certain children at the orphanage, specifically children with unusual talents. The next day, a black SUV pulled up in front of Zoe's school. Two men in suits watched as she left with her friends. Is that her? The girl with the sapphire ring. Yes. Mr. Richardson Sr. wants to see her immediately. What they didn't know was that Marcus was parked across the street. He took out his cell phone and dialed the number Elise had left for emergencies. Jasmine Cooper. It's about bright futures, Marcus said, and a girl with a sapphire ring. I found the proof you're looking for. At Richardson Enterprises, Thomas stared at his father, Victor, who had flown in from Arizona without warning. What's this about reviewing the bright futures documents? Victor demanded. I thought that matter was closed. I found Zoe Williams, Dad, the girl with the sapphire ring. Victor paled. So what? Just another orphan. What matters is Project Skyline. Billions are at stake. What was so special about that girl? Victor laughed dryly. Don't you really understand what's at stake? Some children are valuable. They have talents that can be exploited. She fixes things, Thomas said slowly. She can look at broken machines and just understand them. Victor's smile was icy. Think of the military applications, the patents, the power. Why do you think we bought that orphanage? What neither Richardson realized was that Zoe was already reading Elise's letter, discovering the truth about her past and her special talents, and more importantly, discovering why the sapphire ring was so valuable. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry, but a key to documents that could bring down an empire. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place. On one side, a powerful corporation ready to protect its secrets at any cost. On the other, a 10-year-old girl with an extraordinary talent and a ring worth far more than its weight in sapphires. Between them, a man tried to decide which side of the story he wanted to be on. The conference room on the 50th floor of Richardson Enterprises was buzzing with nervous executives. Victor Richardson had called an emergency meeting, his normally controlled face now contorted into a mask of fury. Where's my son? Victor demanded, pounding the massive glass table. Thomas should have been here an hour ago. As if summoned by his words, the double doors swung open. Thomas entered calmly, accompanied by a woman in a suit whom no one recognized. Sorry I'm late, Dad, Thomas said with a calmness that made Victor frown. This is Federal Prosecutor Elena Martinez. She has some questions about Project Mercury. Victor's face paled. Project Mercury, the code name for the secret program to identify and exploit children with special talents. A name that should never be mentioned in public, let alone to federal authorities. What the hell do you think you're doing? Victor hissed. Thomas walked over to the large screen on the wall and connected his laptop. Something I should have done a long time ago. The truth about Bright Futures and the other 5 institutions you've closed down over the last 15 years. The lights dimmed, and the screen came to life with documents, photographs, and reports. Detailed records of 48 special children identified, tested, and exploited by Richardson Enterprises. You stole confidential documents. Victor tried to regain his composure. That's corporate crime, industrial espionage. Documents evidencing far worse crimes, Thomas replied. Unauthorized experiments on minors. Falsification of adoption records. Bribery of public officials. Intimidation of witnesses. A video began playing on the screen. Security footage from 12 years ago. A young nurse whom Thomas now knew to be Elise Williams fleeing in the middle of the night with a child in her arms. Next, a clip of Victor instructing security guards, find her. The girl has significant military potential. We can't lose her. 3 Bright Futures employees died in accidents in the weeks that followed. Thomas continued relentlessly, including Elise's brother, who had started asking questions. You have no idea of the implications, Victor began, but was cut off when the doors swung open again. Zoe Williams entered, accompanied by Uncle Marcus and a woman carrying a professional camera, Jasmine Cooper of the Chicago Tribune. Zoe, Thomas said softly, you didn't have to come. Yes, I did, she replied with surprising dignity for someone so young. Elise always said that one day I would have to face the men who made us run. Victor looked at the girl, his expression shifting from shock to cold calculation. So, You're the prodigious Project 17. I didn't imagine you'd be so small. And you're the man who killed my mother, Zoe replied, her gaze unflinching. Her brakes didn't fail by accident, did they? Victor smiled, regaining his confidence. Proving anything would be impossible. And you're forgetting who I am. One phone call, and all of this disappears. That's when Zoe opened her backpack and took out the sapphire ring. With deft fingers, she turned the stone, revealing a secret compartment. From inside, she took out a tiny device. Elise was smarter than you thought, she said. This is a storage device she hid in the ring. It contains backup copies of all the Bright Futures records, including recordings of your meetings with military doctors about harnessing children with enhanced cognitive abilities for strategic applications. Victor Richardson, for the first time in his life, was speechless. This is being broadcast live right now, Jasmine Cooper explained, pointing her camera to our studio and directly to social media platforms. Over 10,000 people are already watching. Thomas walked over to his father, keeping his voice low. It's over. The prosecutor has a deal for me. Full cooperation in exchange for immunity. As for you, well, we'll let a jury decide. As federal agents entered the room to arrest Victor Richardson, Zoe approached the man who had destroyed so many lives. My mother taught me that broken machines can be fixed, she said calmly. But broken people need to fix themselves. I hope you get that chance in prison. Victor was led away, his empire crumbling live for the world to see. In the days that followed, Richardson Enterprises' stock plummeted. Investigations revealed decades of unethical practices, illegal experimentation, and systematic corruption. Thomas watched it all with a complex mix of relief and regret. He had lost his family and his inheritance, but he had found something more valuable, his integrity. In the courthouse, as Victor awaited his preliminary hearing, Zoe approached Thomas on the steps outside. What happens now? She asked, the sapphire ring sparkling on her finger, no longer a symbol of secrets, but of truth revealed. Thomas looked out at the city skyline, at the skyscrapers that had been built with money stained by exploitation and suffering. Among them, the gleaming Richardson building, which would soon lose its name. Now, he said, we rebuild. Not just buildings, but lives. What none of them could have predicted at that moment was how that rebuilding would transform not just their lives, but an entire community. An empire built on exploitation was crumbling. But from the ashes, something new and unexpected was about to be born. Something that would forever change the way the world viewed exceptional talent in unlikely places. 5 years have passed since the day Zoe Williams exposed the truth about the Richardson Empire. On a sunny spring morning, she walked through the halls of a newly opened Williams Center for Young Innovators. A sprawling complex of labs, workshops, and classrooms built on the same site where the Bright Futures orphanage once stood. The sensors in the East Wing are still malfunctioning. Zoe, now 15, told the group of engineers following her. Her experienced eyes identified problems in complex systems with the same ease with which she had detected a leak in a Corvette's radiator years ago. At the back of the center, Thomas Richardson talked with investors, his suit replaced by jeans and a button-down shirt. The former billionaire heir had donated his entire personal fortune to found the Mercury Initiative, no longer an exploitation project, but a program dedicated to identifying talented young people from marginalized communities and providing them with opportunities. We discovered 23 children with exceptional talents just this quarter, Thomas explained. Each one receives a full scholarship and personalized mentoring. No contracts, no exploitation, no secrets. Thomas's transformation surprised many, especially former executives at Richardson Enterprises. The man who had once been heir to an empire built on exploitation was now dedicating his life to repairing damage and creating genuine opportunities. Zoe is about to publish her third patent, said Marcus, who now ran the center's engineering program. Harvard, MIT, and Stanford are already fighting over who will recruit her. On the center's main wall, an exhibit documented the entire story. Photographs of the orphanage, newspaper clippings about the fall of Richardson Enterprises, and a headline that changed everything. Richardson empire collapses after teenage revelations. Meanwhile, in a medium-security federal prison, Victor Richardson stared at the walls of his cell. The tycoon who once controlled billions and manipulated lives now spent his days in confinement, abandoned by former allies. His fortune confiscated, his name forever tarnished. He refuses to participate in any rehabilitation program, a guard commented. He still believes he'll get out of here and rebuild everything. The arrogance that had been his trademark was now just a sad caricature. An old man clinging to dreams of power that would never come true. That night, the Williams Center held its first major graduation ceremony. 12 young people from disadvantaged communities had completed the intensive 2-year program, each with job offers or college scholarships in hand. Zoe, still too young to graduate, but already recognized as a mentor by her older peers, took the stage to give a speech. When I was 10, I fixed a stranger's car on the side of the road. She began, twirling the sapphire ring on her finger, now a symbol not of secrets, but of transformation. That small act of generosity exposed a web of exploitation, but also paved the way for something new and better. Thomas watched from the back of the auditorium, his eyes watering. The girl who had destroyed his old world had, in fact, given him a purpose that no fortune could buy. My adoptive mother, Elise, used to say that broken machines can be fixed, but broken systems need to be redesigned from the ground up, Zoe continued. That's what we're doing here, not just fixing what was wrong, but building something entirely new. The next day, Zoe received an unexpected letter. The sender, Isabella Richardson, Victor's daughter, who had renounced her family name after the scandal and now worked as a federal prosecutor. We found 5 more orphanages with programs similar to Bright Futures, the letter read. Thanks to your testimony and the evidence you gathered, we've been able to identify and protect 37 more children. Some have talents like yours. When you're ready, they'd love to meet you. As Zoe read the letter to Thomas, Uncle Marcus, and Aunt Patricia, a sense of closure hung in the air. What had begun with a chance encounter on the side of the road had become a quiet revolution, transforming not only their lives, but an entire system that had thrived on the exploitation of the vulnerable. You know what's ironic? Thomas said, Victor always said he was building a legacy, and he really did, just not the way he imagined it. Zoe looked out the window at the children playing in the center's gardens, free from the kind of manipulation that had nearly defined her own destiny. Real power was never in the buildings or bank accounts, she replied. It was in the ability to make a difference in other people's lives. That evening, as the sun set over the Williams Center, a new sign was unveiled at the entrance. Every talent deserves to flourish. Every child deserves freedom. It was a promise for the future built on the ashes of a past they refused to repeat.